It's time to take a look at another of the most hotly requested subjects from the comments. This week, we're looking at the basics on combiners. Before we begin, clarification. The word combiner is used to describe a lot of different concepts in the Transformers universe. Cybertronians have been linking and merging with each other in a vast array of different ways since the beginning of the franchise. For example, some characters, like Overlord and the Duocons, have robot modes that are formed by the combination of two vehicles. The three Decepticons, who comprise Reflector, or the Micromaster Combiners, each transform into only part of an alternate mode and have to combine with others to make a complete one. Some characters can combine in alternate mode to form a larger vehicle, or unite to become weapons wielded by other Transformers. And there are plenty of examples of Transformers combining in pairs, with one bot essentially allowing their body to become a power-up for the other, transforming into armor, or weapons, or additional limbs that the partner takes control of. Combiner could be used to describe all of these, and more. But really, there's one specific concept above all others that's the first thing that comes to a Transformers fan's mind when they hear the word. And that's when a team of multiple individual Transformers merges together to form a giant-sized super robot. It's one of the most popular Transformers toy gimmicks of all time, part of the franchise since almost the very beginning. This is the kind of combiner that we're looking at today. To distinguish them from the other kinds, fans have, for years, referred to these robots as gestalts, a German term derived from psychology that refers to a whole that's greater than the sum of its parts. But combiner has been used with such official regularity in the 21st century that it remains the best known name for them, even if it is a bit unhelpfully generic. The story of combiners begins with the Japanese toy line Diaclone, which featured two such robots, the Construction Vehicle Robo and the Train Robo. Each of these teams consisted of 6 members who transformed from vehicle to robot and could then merge to form a larger robot. The Construction Vehicle Robo figures were imported by Hasbro to become part of the second year of the Transformers toy line and were released in 1985 as the Constructicons, who merged into the mighty Devastator. The success of Devastator was followed with the addition of 4 new combiner teams to the toy line in 1986. Like Devastator, these toys were designed for Diaclone, but when Diaclone was cancelled, they were released as part of the Transformers toy line first instead. These 4 teams, the Aerialbots, the Stunticons, the Protectobots, and the Combaticons, each consisted of 5 members, and all of them followed the same basic design. The team leader was the largest and formed the super robot's torso, while the 4 smaller members formed the limbs. All the limbs were totally interchangeable. Every small robot could form either an arm or a leg, and they could even be swapped between teams. In Europe, they were known as the Special Teams, but fans would give them a different name. For in Japan, the toys were released as part of a subline of figures entitled Scramble City, referring to the combiners' ability to swap around, or scramble, their limbs. Hence, this style of interchangeable combiner has come to be predominantly referred to by fans as a Scramble City combiner. The potential of the Scramble City play pattern must have been clear to Hasbro, as they went on to design brand new teams in that style that were released over the next 2 years. The Technobots, the Terrorcons, and the Seacons, all fully capable of interacting with the other teams in whose steps they followed. But other combiners who had their own unique non-scramble combination schemes were also introduced, like Predaking and Monstructor, with even more original characters being featured in the Japanese exclusive series, including a Transformers release of the Diaclone Train Robo as Raiden. Now, I could go on like this, but I don't want this video to just be a list of every combiner ever, so suffice it to say that even after Generation 1 ended, combiners of all types remained a constant part of the Transformers toy line. There have been combiners formed from as few as 2 bots to as many as 12. There have been many unique combination methods, and there have been revivals of the Scramble City style. There have been plenty of new combiner characters, and there have been new incarnations of classic ones. Combiners have existed in every major different iteration of the franchise, from the Beast era, to Robots in Disguise, from the Unicron trilogy, to the live-action movies, from animated to the aligned continuity. And they've appeared in comics, cartoons, video games, and more, one of the most famous and beloved concepts in the franchise's history. And their portrayal in-universe has been almost as malleable as they are. Combiners are typically presented as individual beings in their own right, with their own identities formed from the merging of their components' minds. The robots who form them must be unified in purpose to successfully unite their minds, but even then the process is rarely portrayed as a complete success. Inevitable clashes in personality between the components often mean the mental fusion is imperfect, leaving combiners cognitively impaired in some way, or in worst-case scenarios, completely insane. Decepticon combiners tend to be either dim-witted brutes or rampaging monsters, while Autobots wind up emotionally stunted or slow to think and react. Combiners aren't universally depicted in this way, however. Japanese media, for instance, sometimes tends towards the idea of the combined form being controlled by the team leader, rather than having its own unique identity. And there are also cases where a combiner has no single controlling mind, requiring all the components to individually work in concert with each other. Some can work in perfect synchronicity, but an inability to work together can render the combiner all but useless. The divide between components is the greatest weakness combiners have. If dissent between components can be fostered, a combiner can be left fighting with their own body and mind, and their combination may even collapse entirely. To sidestep such problems, some combiners involve only one sentient bot who merges with drones instead of other transformers. Combiners are big, but beginning with the inconsistent animation of Generation 1 and continuing until the modern day, they're often depicted as much bigger than they logically should be, with some even attaining city-stomping Godzilla-esque proportions. IDW Publishing's comic books have credited this to the use of size-altering mass displacement technology, the same process by which characters like Megatron and Soundwave shrink when they transform, employed in reverse. There's no one particular way that a transformer can become a combiner. Classic Generation 1 media offered no special origin for the technology, beyond the fact that it was originally a Decepticon innovation. For the most part, it was just presented as a built-in ability they possessed from the moment of their creation, though the concept of Transformers who weren't built with the ability having their bodies modified to become combiners later in life did also exist. 21st century media has explored combiner technology in more depth, depicting it as much more difficult to master. In addition to the sheer technological and psychological complexity involved in the merging of bodies and minds, some stories have shown that a transformer has to have the genetic potential to become a combiner in their sparks. Reflecting this idea of unlockable combiner potential, it's also possible for combination to be induced through other, more esoteric means beyond simply being built that way. There are several accounts of Transformers who have had no prior modifications undergoing spontaneous reconfiguration that allows them to combine, sometimes induced by exposure to exotic energy, or by being unwillingly subjected to a forced combination by other Transformers. Similar effects have also been achieved by more magical sources of power, often connected to Primus and Unicron, which have often pushed the concept of combination beyond the limits of what mere technology can achieve, forging abstract combiners that stretch the definition of the term out of dozens or hundreds of component transformers. A common explanation that unifies a lot of these ideas, which has emerged across multiple continuities in the last few years, including the live-action movies, IDW Publishing's comic books, and the aligned continuity, is that combination is an ancient ability, once possessed by Transformers in the distant past, which many today still hold the unlockable potential for, but which has become lost to history and only recently rediscovered by modern-day Transformers. This serves as an explanation for why so many modern combiners are mentally flawed, the idea being that attempts to scientifically recreate this lost power have mostly proven imperfect. The ancient origins of combining lie with Nexus Prime, one of the original 13 primes from Cybertronian prehistory, who was the first combiner. Nexus wielded the mystical artifact known as the Enigma of Combination, and used its power to bestow the ability to combine on the Cybertronian race. The Enigma was key to the story of 2015's Combiner Wars toy line, which, alongside a tie-in cartoon from Machinima and comic book storyline from IDW, brought Combiners back to the fore in a big way, fulfilling the fandom's long-held wish for new, modernized incarnations of the classic Generation 1 characters, as well as introducing multiple new Combiners, most famously Victorion, the first ever female Scramble City-style Combiner, as voted for by fans in an online poll. With Combiners also dominating the Robots in Disguise toy line and cartoon in 2017, it's been a remarkable few years for these big bots, and with the Power of the Primes toy line set to feature even more Combiners, both new and classic, their renaissance looks set to continue for a few more. And those are the basics on Combiners. Everyone's got a favourite Combiner, tell me yours in the comments. And come back next time when we'll be kicking off a run of Patreon-sponsored episodes. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss it, and visit Patreon to learn more.